am very excited to bring you into this private conversation where you are going to get the wisdom and insights of one of the top people on Wall Street. So Carla Harris, thank you for making time for us today.
It is my pleasure, Bonnie St. John.
We're having a straight up conversation about what it takes to advance, and particularly for women and minorities. And, I have a disability, LGBTQ, people with differences have to navigate their relationships and the process of moving forward in corporate America. And you've done it. You've proven yourself, and you've been giving other people advice on how to do it, powerful advice for many years. Your book, Strategize to Win, Expect to Win. You've done many podcasts and interviews and TED Talks, and you have been pounding the pavement to try to build runways for people to take off behind you. So thank you for making the time today.
Oh, my pleasure.
So let me start off with just defining sponsorship. You've been defining sponsorship for people for years, but I still meet lots of people who don't really understand the difference between sponsorship and mentorship.
I love this topic. And the first time I used the word sponsor in public was at the University of Michigan Black Business Students Association, the MBA program, 1990. February of 1990 was the first time I started talking about sponsorship, Bonnie, because I think that was the first time I was able to put it all together as to what this thing was and who this person is in your life. So let me define. And I'm going to actually give you the difference between the mentor and the sponsor, because that's where most confusion happens to be. The mentor is the person you can tell the good, the bad, and the ugly to. This is the person that you share the intimate details of your career with, your fears, your concerns, your mistakes, your triumphs, even your strategies. I'm in this box. I want to be in this box. Who do I work and how do I get there? But the mentor needs to know you very well, because the mentor's job is to give you tailored advice, tailored specifically to you and to your career aspirations. Like, I've known you for a very long time. I could qualify as being a mentor because I feel like I know you well enough that if you ask me something, I'll say, Bonnie, based on what I know about you, here's the advice. But if Sarah was to ask me something, because I don't know Sarah very well, I would approach my advice very differently. It would not be tailored to her. So it would be a macro piece of advice. Here's what you can do. And in general, this would work for anyone. But a mentor is going to give you that micro advice, Bonnie, specifically to you, because I know you're this, this, and this. I'm going to tell you this. So the mentor gives you tailored advice that you can successfully execute. Now, the mentor does not need to be within your organization. They do not need to look like you. They just have to understand the context that you're working in order to give you that tailored advice that you can successfully execute in that environment. You can survive a long time in your career without a mentor, but you do not ascend in any environment without the sponsor. The sponsor is not the person you tell the good, the bad, and the ugly to. The sponsor is the person you want focused on the good, and the good, because this is the person that is carrying your paper into the room. This is the person that behind closed doors in that room where you are not present, they're going to use their voice, their currency, their power on your behalf as your name comes up in a conversation to get whatever you want done for you. And the reason why this is so important is, Bonnie, every critical part of your career, every important decision about your career in any environment, those decisions will be made behind closed doors in a room where you are not present. So when your name comes up in that room, somebody has to speak up and say, oh yeah, Bonnie, absolutely. She's the best relationship person that we have. She's the one to give that tough client to. Oh, Sarah, she'll walk through walls and she'll take the team with her. She's the right one to prosecute that new opportunity. And there are never numbers associated with that. Oh, Bonnie's a 10, Sarah's a 9. All qualitative comments, which are a function of the relationships that people have with you. So the sponsor must be within your organization, unlike the mentor. The sponsor must have a seat at the decision-making table, and the sponsor has to have some juice, i.e. they have to have the ability to get it done for you, whether it's a new assignment, the promotion, the top bonus, the top pay, whatever it is.
Do you think about that with closing a deal too? Do you think about with your clients that you have sponsors on the client side who's going to be in that closed door room deciding, is it Morgan Stanley or is it somebody else? And they go, oh, so you have sponsors who are in that decision-making room when they decide if they're going to give you their business.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So in most cases, if it's a banker, the banker either has a strong relationship with the CFO or a strong relationship with the CEO. And even if the banker has a strong relationship with the CEO, if the CFO, who's going to be driving that deal from the client side, has a strong relationship with another bank, you got to work really hard to unseat that, because that person is the one that's going to be driving, even if you have a great relationship with the CEO. But having that CEO at the table speaking up on your behalf can weigh the issue at the end of the day.
That's great. So you have written so much on career strategy and sponsorship and mentorship and how to get ahead. And so I would encourage everybody to get your books. So in this discussion, let's focus on what's changed since you wrote your books. There's this whole dialogue out there about the social justice movement and the pandemic, quarantine, and working virtually. What are some updates that you want to give people who are avid, like me, who are avid readers of your books?
Yeah, I will tell you that the advice that I give in my books are still very relevant because, frankly, Bonnie, I don't think the game has really changed, right? By definition, if the game had changed, the advice should be irrelevant, and it certainly is not. I continue to deploy the pearls and use them very successfily and effectively. And based on the feedback that I get from other people, they're still using them. So,
amen. I am singing the choir, and I am, singing from your books.
Thank you. So the game inside of any organization is still the same. And my advice is always around, despite what the organization is doing, what can you do to successfully navigate that environment and ascend and maximize your success?
Yeah. So you're saying despite what the organization's doing. And I think when you say what happened in 2020, there was a lot more talk about system. How do we change the system?
And that's where I'm going.
The system. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
That's where I'm going. So I just wanted to be clear that the advice will still be relevant no matter what. But what changed is that I'd say largely America, but let's talk about corporate America or philanthropic America, really started to see the inequities that exist, as you put it, in the system. So away from any individual's performance or who they are, there are inequities in the system. And because we had so many things that happened in the country around racial injustice and the social inequities that result from those kinds of injustices and discrimination, it made organizations look at themselves. And all of a sudden there was an aha moment of, oh, maybe we should check our environment, because if now we are aware of the fact that it's happening broadly in the communities in which we live, maybe we ought to check the house in which we work. And companies started asking the question internally. So what has changed? I would say the opportunity to exercise your voice, no matter who you are. And I told a number of folks last year in particular that were now getting asked by their CEO, well, how should I be feeling about this? Or how are you processing all this? Or what kind of organization are we? The initial response when the shelter-in-place protocol started in April and May, even before the terrible tragedy that happened to Mr. Floyd, people were calling saying, oh, now they want to ask me. And certainly on the back of the terrible killing of Mr. Floyd in late May and early June, people were calling and said, well, now they want to talk to me. Well, I don't know if I want to talk to them because I've been in this organization for 15 years and it hasn't gone well for me, blah, blah, blah. And I have to tell you, Bonnie, I said to very, very senior folks of color across a number of different industries, do not let your anger impede your opportunity.
I love it. Wait. Just take a breath right there. Yeah. Do not let your anger impede your opportunity. I love you are such an orator. That's the poetry.
Thank you.
It's poetry.
Yeah, but I just said, listen, I know you're mad. I know you're pissed that now someone is soliciting your voice. But guess what? They are soliciting your voice. So you should have the grace to answer the question. because perhaps now you will be able to make an accelerated and an even bigger impact than you ever were, because now there's an enlightenment that happened. I hate that the enlightenment had to happen the way that it happened, but let us not let it be in vain.
Yeah.
We all should be shamed that so many people had to die over the last year, couple of years, 5 years, you name it, not to mention the centuries, for us to get to the place where, as a society, we're ready to try to make some changes. But if we are, and let's assume that we are,
let's not lose the moment. Let's not lose the moment. You know what I hear? The subtext under what you're saying too is, if you need to do some therapy about the last 10 years, go do that, but don't waste the moment, trying to process your therapy in the middle of your company.
And listen, I won't even comment on the therapy or the not. It's just that somebody's asking you. Don't waste the opportunity right now.
Somebody threw you the ball. Don't fumble the ball, right? Grab the ball and run for the touchdown.
There you go. And run fast.
Run fast. We, as you know, we have a program for multicultural women in leadership in corporate America. We're actually doing a lot more programs as well with multicultural men and all women and women in tech and other things too. So we do a lot of career programs. And what we saw during the pandemic and the quarantine was that there was a lot of pain and processing. And so our alumni association got together and gave people some supports too. And it's the same message. It's process the pains of the past, but move forward and be the change to pave the way for other folks as well.
I love it. Talk about poetry. That's beautiful. I love it.
Thank you.
That's exactly right.
Thank you. Thank you. So there are risks, though, to stepping up. When your company comes to you and says, you're Black, tell us how to do this. Sometimes that's an opportunity. Sometimes that's a pitfall, right? So how do you tell the difference?
Well, here's the thing. I don't think that any person that, has not been trained around effective processes can necessarily answer that question. So I don't advocate that you go over your skis, and I don't advocate that you say, your company says, tell us how to do this. That's not the right question, right? The question is, talk to me about some of the things we should be aware of. Talk to me about some of the things that you might have been thinking that we could do. And if you are interested in stepping up for that opportunity, now's the time to walk right into it and say, let me handle this for you. But I think that when someone asks those kinds of questions, you position it in a way that's going to be most impactful for you to answer. So in the way that you just said that to me, tell us how to do this, I would say, listen, I'm not telling you that I'm the expert that can tell you the how, but let me talk to you about the why. And let me talk to you about some of the issues you should be thinking about or concerned with when you get someone who can design a program and help you implement. I'll be happy to be on the steering committee to review what they are proposing to us, because I do have the internal context that I can look through the right lens, but I'm not the person to design the blah, blah, blah.
That's
so don't
right.
set yourself up for failure.
Right.
But because you are who you are, a woman or a person of color or both, you do have a perspective that's important and important enough to have a seat at the table.
So you could be on the committee, or you could even be leading the committee, but
Absolutely.
you're not gonna pretend to have expertise you don't. I'm not going to design your
Why do that?
career program. Yeah.
That's
So
right.
yeah. So that's great advice. And I think it's important that you've said it over and over again. So I'm just going to repeat what you said, which is, when you are asked to step into something like this, make sure you frame it or reframe it in a way that's a win for you. And there's no need to apologize about that. That is still serving your company and the world. You're just serving it in a way that works, that's effective. So terrific. So we've talked, you've defined sponsorship for us. We've talked a little bit about 2020. Let's talk a little bit about authenticity. And, I get frustrated sometimes because people say, oh, just be yourself. I'm always myself. I'm myself with anybody, and that actually isn't good advice for leaders. Being a leader is a little more complicated than just saying I'm going to be myself. And for women, for multicultural people, for LGBT, for people with disabilities, just saying just be yourself doesn't really address some of the complexity of what it's like to lead and have some diversity and differences.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you How would you advise people to be authentic? I know you have a lot.
Yes. So here's my prescription, if you will, for how to bring your authentic self into any environment. The first thing, Bonnie, is that you need to know who you are. And I tell people, I don't say that lightly, because before we were in this shelter in place protocol, most of us, certainly you and I, were constantly on planes running around, and most of us failed to check in with ourselves and say, who am I today relative to who I was in 2012? Relative to who I was in 2019, relative to who I was last month, because we're all constantly evolving, constantly changing, and some of it's conscious and some of it's unconscious. So first of all, know who you are. The second thing is understand and embrace the fact that we are all multifaceted. There is an inquisitive you, there's an intellectual you, there's an introspective you, there's a funny you, there's a frivolous you, there's a short-tempered you, an argumentative you. We all are multifaceted. Understand that and embrace that. And now the third key to bringing all of you into any environment, now you can relax and just meet people wherever they are. And I tell people, when you're not preoccupied with trying to figure out how you need to be because I'm meeting Bonnie or I'm meeting Carla, when you're not preoccupied with what you think we want to see and how you think you need to show up, you can actually be present in that moment. And the minute you walk into that room, you can connect, from the energy, how to connect with that person, how to connect with those people that are in that boardroom, how to connect with 1,000 people that you walk into an auditorium and you're about to speak. You can feel the energy and you can decide what part of you at that moment is going to authentically connect with that audience, whether it's one person or 1,000 people. And I tell people, just trust me, you will be able to feel it. And I'm not sure I would have thought that if somebody had told me that, but now having done that so many times, I am very clear and I can tangibly feel. And as you know, I don't speak with any slides, Bonnie. And the reason I don't speak with any slides is that I want to be able to call the audible at the last minute. And I kid you not, I can't tell you how many times I've been speaking in front of a group of people and I can feel, don't do that, Pearl, do this one. I know you can't.
You mentioned pearls. You mentioned pearls, and I just want to clarify for anybody who doesn't know you as well as I do that you talk about your pearls, Carla's pearls, your pearls of wisdom.
And I noticed you have on yours.
So I know it. I'm wearing my pearls to honor you. I said that I'm like, I'm going to wear Carla's pearls, and you got our pearls on today. One more thing I got to just say to honor you. I have a picture of us together. This is on my desk, so I see that every day.
That is awesome.
You
got to make me a copy.
You are somebody who has been a huge influence in my life, and so sorry. So you've got your pearls.
Thank you. So as I said, I'm in the moment, and I can feel the energy in the room that will tell me, I know you were going to give that pearl, but you ought to do this one, and I follow that, right? So. If you bring all of you into any environment, you will know which part of you that can authentically connect with that person. And the mistake that young professionals make in particular is that they believe in order to be authentic, I have to show you all of who I am. And I have to wear all of my facets on the sleeve. And you do not. You can decide which part of you at that moment is going to connect with that person authentically.
And as multicultural professionals or as women or, whatever you bring to the table, you just have more facets, right? Absolutely. And that's okay. And so you can leverage those facets.
Which makes you an even richer person, right? Because now you have other ways that you can connect with people that someone who doesn't look like you doesn't have, right? If you are a woman, all of the qualities that are innate to women, you're bringing that to the table. You may be bringing some empathy to the table. You may be bringing extraordinary EQ to the table. If you're a person of color, you might have grown up in a context that offers a completely different perspective around resilience, around understanding, around your ability to read situations, to study people that other folks who haven't been in different types of contexts haven't been able to do. I could go on and on with respect to the other assets that you're bringing to the table, which is all the more reason you should be powerful and feel powerful in your person, because you're packing something extra in your bag.
The other mistake I think I see people making around authenticity is feeling like it means I'll never change. I am exactly who I am and I'm not changing. How does that work?
Then you're already dead.
Yeah.
Right? Because the only person that should feel so staunchly about that is somebody who's never going to have the opportunity to grow.
Right.
And the only person that doesn't have the opportunity to grow is somebody who's no longer with us. And so, you should not, and I think you're absolutely right, Bonnie. It's a great point that you're bringing up. Some people are holding so tightly to who I am and I'm not going to change. Well, that's a huge liability.
And if you do change, if you do grow as a leader and bring on new skills and behaviors, you will feel inauthentic sometimes too, right? So if you expect to feel 100% authentic every minute of every day, that's also a recipe for not growing.
Yeah, but but the other thing is, I would argue, Bonnie, that you shouldn't even feel that way. If you say, I like the way Bonnie St. John connects with an audience. And you say, man, I wish I could do that. I'm going to start to work on that. There's nothing inauthentic about it. You own that decision. You decided that you were going to do that. And every day that you're trying to do it, you may not be mastering it, but you're working on it every single day.
I'm just acknowledging that getting up in front of a group may make you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so I think what we're both saying is don't mistake discomfort for inauthenticity.
Yes, ma'am. Well put. Yes.
Because you may have to get uncomfortable sometimes to grow, but that doesn't make you inauthentic.
That's correct.
So yeah, so I love when you said, put your ladder on the right wall when you were talking about authenticity. Is so you may, if you're I think you always say this is, if you work on Wall Street, you're expected to wear pretty conservative clothes and hairstyles, but you like that. So it's not inauthentic for you.
That's correct. And I'm glad you brought up that, because everyone should understand that every job has a uniform. I don't care what it is, right? And so when you authentically decide that you want that career or you want that job in that company, you're also saying, I'm signing up for the uniform. So it is inauthentic, or it would have been inauthentic for me in 1987 to walk on the Wall Street and say, but wait a minute, I'm smart. I can work hard, and I don't understand why you need to wear, I'm
going to wear jeans. I'm going to wear my jeans.
Suit. I'm going to wear jeans and a polo. Yeah. That would have been inauthentic for me to walk into that environment to do that, especially since the organization and the career at that time demanded a different uniform. Now, if I said I want to do finance, but it's not me to dress like that, then the authentic decision would have been to find another finance job where I could wear those khakis and a button-down shirt.
Maybe you could do finance in Silicon Valley, right? And that's it. You said everybody has a uniform, and immediately my brain went to, well, what about Silicon Valley? That's actually a uniform too.
Yes,
because if you show up in your pearls
St. John
suit, they're going to think who are you? You're fuddy-duddy, or you're old-fashioned. We don't. There's actually pressure to dress a certain way there too. And it's not the same way as is on Wall Street.
That's exactly right. I can't tell you how many times my tech bankers have asked me to come out for something, and they're like, it's dressed down, Carla. It's dressed down. It's dressed down. Because everybody knows I like having the more formal look. That's fine for me. And I would have gone out there in a St. John suits, right? But they were like, dressed down.
I was going to Apple headquarters for a meeting with a friend of mine, and I tried to dress down, and it's so uncomfortable for me. I am so comfortable in a suit, and it was like, okay, I'm going to do this. But so we have authentic, but you also want to flex to meet your customers and flex to meet different people, but you know what your center is, you know what you're flexing from. So and one other thing I wanted to bring up with you too is there was a couple of other books I was reading by people who give career advice, and they're great books. I won't name names, but they were by men. And they said, you ask people to be your mentors, but you don't ask people to be your sponsors. They just step up. If they want to sponsor you, they will just step up. And I just noticed that it was 2 books by men where I saw that. And in your book, you explicitly say, hoping somebody will sponsor you, not asking for that sponsorship, may work for men. But as a woman and a minority woman, you may be waiting a long time before that just happens for you. So talk to me a little bit about that. Why doesn't that work for women? And should it work for men?
Yeah, I have to tell you, I wouldn't give anybody that advice, with all due respect to those authors. And I'm sure they're writing from their own experience. But here's why I don't ascribe to that. I believe that you have the power to drive your career and your success in your hand, and that you should not leave that to chance. And so what that suggests that you just read to me is that you're hoping somebody will choose you. And here's the deal, Bonnie. There are people in organizations that have power, that have influence, that have a voice, don't know how to use it, don't know if they should use it, have never really thought about using it on someone else's behalf. And I'm a strong believer that you help people help you, right? So you may be hoping that this person, we're going to call him Carl, you may be hoping that Carl will sponsor you in that also important conversation, but Carl's not sure about how much power he has. He's not sure whether or not he can or should say something at the table. He's not even aware of the fact that you want his sponsorship. All of the above could be true.
Some senior leaders don't even know what you mean by sponsorship.
That's exactly right. They don't even understand the concept of sponsorship and what that looks like, because for them, it happened informally. So they weren't even aware of the thing happening for them that allowed them to become the senior person with power. And so if you leave it to chance, you may be surrounded by those kinds of people, and they would never think to sponsor you, whether you're a man, a woman, black, white, or any other persuasion. So I think that it is important that you are clear on who's carrying your paper into the room. So if there's a discussion and your name comes up, then you know somebody's going to pound the table for you. And if you are not clear, you need to ask the question. And I'll give you this example. When I was up for managing director, I knew how the process worked, and I knew who had seats at the table. But as I started going around the table thinking who might pound the table for whom, I got to the end of that table and I said, I cannot without a shadow of a doubt say who would pound the table for me. And I know that I can't leave that uncovered and just hope. So that's when I got over my own discomfort. And I want to say right now in public, it is uncomfortable. You do feel uncomfortable. If you never asked someone to do that, it does feel kind of strange. I felt the same way. But I weighed that against me not asking someone and then not getting promoted. Then how was I going to feel? At least by making sure I'd had the conversation, i.e. asked for the order, I would at least have done all that I could do. And then if it didn't work, okay, but at least I didn't have to sit with myself and say, wonder what would have happened if I had asked. So I went to someone, and you know the story about it. I said, listen, I know that you know as well as I do, it's important that I get promoted this year, but somebody has to be behind closed doors pounding the table on my behalf. You know me, you know my work, you know the client feedback, and I think you would do a terrific job on my behalf. And the guy hummed it at first, but then he said yes. And again, the reason why that was important for me to do is if he had said no, he would have had to tell me why. And that data would have been important data for me from which I could make my own decisions or be able to inform the next conversation I had with somebody else to sponsor me. And if he had said yes, then at least I could walk away knowing, all right, we'll see what happens, but I know somebody's going to speak up on my behalf. Because nobody's going to tell you that they will, and then they don't. That's generally not how the game is played when you get to this rarefied air of getting promoted to these senior positions.
I can't tell you, too, how many people I've talked to that say they didn't ask. Like you said, so you step up, you ask, it's uncomfortable, but you ask. People who didn't ask and then get passed over for their promotion and then go in and say, why didn't I get it? I don't understand. And they hear, I didn't know you wanted it. You never asked me to go to bat for you, and I think people make that mistake once and then they don't make it again. The other thing that you said in your book that I think is so powerful, I just want to make sure we highlight as well, is that early on in your career, you didn't know you needed to ask for that promotion or ask for that raise. And you learned that, but then you went through a period where you thought, well, they know. So as you can get more senior to where you think, well, every year I have that conversation. I say, I want this raise or I want this promotion. I want this. But then after a while, they know what you want. That's and right. You said you lapsed into, too much complacency.
That's exactly right. And you have to make sure that you're having that conversation every year. Do not assume that the organization just knows, right? Nobody's sort of sitting around thinking full time, what does Mary really want? Or what is Mary thinking? You need to make sure, again, help them help you and be clear about your wants, your needs, and your expectations.
So you're clear about your expectation and you're arming people to go to bat for you as well. So not only can they not read your mind and know what everything you've accomplished this year, but it's not just about what you've done, but what are the implications of what you've done? What is the value of what you've done to the company? So don't expect somebody else to do all the math or the calculations or, you know, the extrapolations to understand what your value is. If you help package your value for them, you can equip them to go to bat for you.
I could not agree more, Bonnie. Absolutely. Again, help them help you.
I
always say, give people the narrative. Make it easy.
Make it easy for them to help you. Well, this has been a terrific conversation. Anything else you want to make sure that people know about how to navigate the corporate ladder in the world today? Anything that's current? What is your most important advice for people to take away from this conversation?
Now that's like asking which of your children do you love the most? So let me just leave you with one piece that I want people to be clear about. Understand what the key success factors are for the role that you're in or the role that you are aspiring to. Because so often we get put in positions or we get promoted or we come into a new organization and we say, I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to make sure that I get the top. And then if it doesn't happen, we're frustrated and we don't know why. Well, we never ask the question, what does success look like in this role? And we go on with our own assumptions of what working hard looks like and what they're likely to value. So make sure you understand what's valued the most in your seat and beware if you are being asked to do something for the very first time. Because a lot of times organizations, or if you're being brought in as the new blah, 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 and they've never had this role before, because oftentimes when companies are creating a new role, they really don't know how to evaluate it. And they certainly don't know how to compensate it. So you have to make sure that you are at that table when you are defining that report card. Or even if the report card has been defined before, you go back in and say, okay, this is how you guys are thinking about success at a minimum, blah, blah, and blah. But here's how I'm thinking based on the resources that you said are available, based on the timeline that you want, and based on the outcome, here's what I'm thinking success ought to look like. So you can have a meeting of the minds. So that's defining the report card. But if it's a brand new space, as I said, they don't know how to evaluate it. They don't know how to compensate it. And while no one knows how to do that at the beginning before you took the role, after you are in the role, everybody will have an opinion. So now it's your job to make sure that you refine what success looks like. So I like to say, Bonnie, you define what success looks like in a new role, but you also refine it. And you must do that before you get to your first full year in that position so that you have a chance to outperform as opposed to working really hard doing what you think, and you're not even aware of the fact that the organization is changing its taste and what they want after watching you for 1 or 2 quarters in that role.
So you have to check in often about what does success look like and keep writing it down, send it in an email to somebody. Yeah, keep defining it. You're also reminding me another African-American woman I know who's very high level in the financial industry. She got wooed into a company to take a job that had never existed before, which is similar to what you're saying. And not only did she define the criteria, but she defined her exit strategy. So she's saying, you're asking me to do something risky. If it fails, let's define that, what that looks like. Because I had all this going on for me over here. You're asking me to come over here and take a big risk for you. Let's define what both sides of that risk look like. You know, so you have more power to negotiate those outcomes ahead of time. And if you just say, oh, I'll just jump in and give it a shot, that's not necessarily gonna work out the best way. But I love that you've also acknowledged the things may change while you're in the pool, the metric, the side, whatever metaphor we want to use. Things change in the midst.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to bring this up as my last point, Bonnie, because there are going to be many people that are in your constituency that will be watching this, that because we are in the context that we are living in right now, will be shown opportunities that have never existed before. So that's why I wanted to put that out there as to how they ought to think about that as they go into those kinds of roles and understanding what the key success factors are for any role, because there will also be people who are in your audience that will be given an opportunity to step up into a new role, not a brand new role for the organization, but a new role for them. because of the context. But again, they can't just walk into that role and say, I'm going to work really hard. I've worked hard for 10 years. I'm going to keep doing that. It's working for me. Understand how they view success in that new role of yours before you start to prosecute.
And I know you've said this before too, so I'm just going to throw it in there too, is when you're asked to take that new role, a high profile role, as part of the package, who's going to be my sponsor? Who's going to have my back when I go into that role?
You got it.
That's an important, before you accept taking this high risk, high profile role, you got to know who has your back, right?
You got it. Absolutely.
So, thank you so much for spending time with me and this community of people. And you have made such a difference for so many people. I just want to, one more time, recommend her book, Strategize to Win and Expect to Win. And she has you have your own podcast now too, right? And just, you've done a lot of videos. There's a lot of videos of you speaking, just so much wisdom. You can take a college course from Carla Harris online these days. And I highly recommend that you do. Thank you, Carla, for all your wisdom, your kindness, your generosity of spirit and heart and wisdom. You have done so much for so many, and I count myself in that number.
Well, thank you so much, Bonnie. And I am glad that we are kindred spirits, because you're making a big difference out here in the world. And you, too, have done so much for so many people. So let's keep trucking, sister.
Amen to that.